It's all good. And you know what? It is 6:30, so we are officially live. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Brompton Cemetery. Today it is Sunday the 29th or 30th. I've decided to tell you the date at the beginning of the tour because I think sometimes people are watching the replay a bit later and then they don't know. So yeah, it's 6:30 p.m. UK time on Sunday night, the 30th of July. It might not look like July because it's proper wet, but yeah, so 30th of July. And for the ones that don't know me, I'm Nathalie. If you happen to be completely new to me, say hello in the chat. And let's flip this camera around and let's go. So today we're having a little walk in Brompton Cemetery. So we are in Chelsea, and there's a few people we'll see today that oh, happy birthday, Nikki, that you might have heard of in some of my tours. So let's see if you remember them. The first gentleman is here, William Terriss. Does anyone remember when, in which of my tours we've talked about William Terriss? Hi Michelle, welcome. I'm glad you're celebrating with us, Nikki. Yes, it's an amazing cemetery, Polly. Yeah, it's one of our magnificent seven. Exactly, Kurt. That's the actor we talked about that was stabbed in Covent Garden. Not in the eye, but yeah, he was stabbed in the front and in the back. Exactly, Laurie. Oh, your favorite was Guy Fawkes. Well, it should come back again this year. So yeah, you might remember William Terriss. William Terriss was a fantastic Victorian actor. Sadly, he's now remembered mainly because of the way he died, more than for his work. But at the time, so he was 50 when he was murdered. He was a bit like the Hugh Grant of the time, a fantastic actor, stage actor. And yeah, he was indeed stabbed at the back of the Adelphi Theatre by one of his colleagues, an actor as well called Arthur Prince, that was not maybe as successful and maybe a little bit jealous of Terriss. And it's quite sad because actually Terriss had been helping him, getting him some little roles in some of his plays. But somehow Prince had some mental health issues and he was a big drinker. He somehow blamed Terriss for his failure as an actor. And William Terriss is also known for the paranormal activity that followed his death. When he passed, it was after 7 p.m. I think it's 7:20, just before to be on stage at the Adelphi. And that very moment, at his home, miles away, his wife and son had obviously no idea what had just happened. His dog apparently went barking like crazy in the mansion, and his wife was like, "What does he see? What does he see that we can't see?" And somehow it does appear that the dog had felt, what had just happened, the massive drama that had just happened, and that his master was killed. And apparently just before to die, he did not die straight away. He was taken upstairs to his dressing room. William Terriss famously said, "I'll be back." And well, he was. He's been seen quite a few times in the Adelphi Theatre. His famous mistress, Jessie Millwood, was hunted by him, as well as Covent Garden Station. I might have told you in my Covent Garden tour, but he was seen quite a few times by the staff in the station, so much so that some of the staff members refused to work at Covent Garden Station. They asked for a transfer to a different station, and that's when the station had to hire a medium to try to put him to rest. Hi, David, and hi, everyone that I did not greet yet. Nice to have you along, guys. And we'll go and see another gentleman that you might have heard of in some of my tours as well. Not the same tour. It is Jon Snow. Do we remember in which tour we spoke about Jon Snow? Not the one from Games of Thrones. Jon Snow, the father of epidemiology. Exactly, Kurt. That's the one about cholera. So this is Jon Snow. He was an amazing, what today we would call an epidemiologist. At the time, it wasn't really a term quite yet, but he was an amazing doctor. He was from York, and he actually walked all the way down to London to study at the Ontarian School of Medicine. And you know, an epidemiologist, they usually study the cases, but they also study the exceptions. And there was an epidemic that struck in 1854 in Soho, a cholera epidemic. Does anyone maintain the cemetery? Trisha is asking. So yes, the cemetery is actually part of the Crown Estate. So it belongs to, it's like Buckingham Palace, it actually belongs to the Crown. It's like any of the other royal parks. So the royal parks maintain it, as well as the Friends of West Norwood. But what you'd have to know is that with all those you know, magnificent 7 cemeteries, they are also now used as a nature reserve. It's a little bit overgrown at the moment, yes. Usually it's a bit less, but yeah, it's used as a park, but also it's also used for nature and animals and wildlife. So that's why it might seem a bit like a forest. It's meant to be very green and to, you know, they let nature go. They do trim it, but not too often. What part of the cemetery am I in? Peter is asking. We're right by the main entrance. So that's the north entrance of the cemetery. So yeah, Jon Snow, he was, we actually have quite a few cholera victims buried here as well. And he was a very brave man. He believed, you know, at the time everyone believed that cholera was airborne. They believed that you would breathe it in with the miasma theory. And he was a strong believer that cholera was transmitted in the water. And at the time in Soho, there were a few exceptions. A few people that you would imagine should have been contracting cholera as well that did not. For example, there were people working at a brewery, the Lion Brewery in Soho. So Snow went to ask, where do you get your water? And at the brewery they said, we don't drink water, we've got free beer. Why should we drink water? And at the workhouse as well, the ladies were not contaminated. So Snow went to ask, where do you get your water from? And they said they have their own well. So eventually Jon Snow was able to identify one single pump, a water pump in Soho, that was contaminated by the cholera bacteria. We believe all started with a baby Louis, that was contaminated. And then he managed to remove the handle of that very pump that stopped the epidemic. But very sadly, the sanity board did not believe him, and for another 30 years, people still believed that cholera was transmitted by a miasma theory. So yeah, amazing epidemiologist, and he was also known to have experimented with anesthetics with Queen Victoria when she was giving birth. Anyway, here is another lady that we spoke about in some of my tours. So that's an easy one. Emmeline Pankhurst. So we spoke about her in the Suffragette tour. So Emmeline Pankhurst, amazing lady, of course. But there's another very interesting person here. Well, not here, but that got involved. It's the sculptor. So the sculptor of the monument, it's a lady that's a little bit lesser known. Her name is Julian Phyllis Allen. Now, I said her name, that's a boy's name. Her original name was Eva Dorothy Allen. But you know, being a sculptor in Victorian times was not a job for ladies. You might remember Princess Louise, Queen Victoria's daughter, was also a sculptor, and Queen Victoria was not exactly overly excited about it. So Eva became Julian to, well, she was a lesbian. She probably maybe was not the girliest of ladies, but it's because she wanted to be taken seriously as an artist. You know, still today we do have some artists kind of hiding their ladiness, like J.K. Rowling. You know, when she published Harry Potter, she went with J.K. because she did not want people to know that she was a girl, because you know it could be a handicap in your artistic life. So Eva Dorothy Allen became Julian, but she kept the pronouns. She kept being called a she or miss. Yes, she served in, and she lived a very long life. She lived at the age of, she died at the age of 103, I think she did. So yeah, amazing lady. And she's the one that did the monument for her, Emmeline Pankhurst. So Emmeline Pankhurst, I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard quite a lot about her. She was a suffragette. She was the leader of the Women's Social and Political Union. A suffragette, not to be confused with the suffragist. The suffragists, they were also fighting for the ladies' right to vote, but they had been fighting peacefully for several years and not very successfully. There were men and ladies. Not all the suffragists were ladies. Some men were also helping. And the suffragettes, in today's definition, really, we could call them terrorists. You know, the suffragettes, they decided to go for deeds, not words, as Emmeline Pankhurst famously said. And they used, well, arson, bombs. So today we would say they've been lucky. They've not really injured many people apart from themselves, like Emily Davidson. But yeah, technically today we would probably call them terrorists. And we do not know really how much of an impact on the ladies' right to vote the suffragettes had versus the First World War, because with the first, you'd have to remember that at the beginning of the 20th century, not every man could vote. You'd have to have property, you know. So a lot of young working class men were not allowed to vote. Yet those men, they had gone fighting for their country in the First World War. Some of them had lost a leg, an arm. So when they got back, it felt like we had to give them the right to vote. You know, you had to give every man the right to vote. And the ladies had been so active through the war, taking over the jobs of the men, it felt natural that they would also get the right to vote. So after the First World War in 1918, they gave those men and some ladies the right to vote, because so many young men had died. Bonjour, Sean. So many young men had died with the First World War that if we gave all ladies the right to vote, then they would have been the majority. So we were not really, you know, not ready for that quite yet. So they've decided to give only the ladies over 31 the right to vote. And later on, in 1928, it was for all ladies, not old. And sadly, that was just a few years after, a few weeks after Emmeline passed away. So she's not, she's just missed it, but she would have been very proud, I suppose. Anyway, we're now going to see a time machine. The monument straight ahead in the middle could potentially be a time machine. Yes, you've heard this right. To travel through time. Bear with me one sec. I think I might be able to get the umbrella away. I think it stopped. Yeah, Hold on, I'm just gonna get this away. I'll keep it close by because I don't trust it might go again, but yeah, that's gonna be much more convenient. And the gentleman that built the so-called time machine, his grave is here. He is Joseph Bonamy. Well, that was a collaboration between Bonamy and Sam Warner, a chap that was a naval weapon inventor. Both of them might have been a bit of a charlatan, really. And let me show you on his grave, Bonamy has placed that's Anubis. Anubis, the Egyptian god of embalming, and basically the god of the dead. Anubis was taking care of the dead for many years. Then Osiris kind of took over. They kind of changed a bit, but yeah. So in Victorian times, we had this fascination for Egypt, you know. Some people even called it Egyptomania because people were fascinated by Egypt, and some even believed that those pharaohs, you know, they might have discovered the secret of eternal life, you know, who knows. And the lady that's buried in this amazing Egyptian style mausoleum, she was a bit of a mystery as well. She's Anna Courtroy. She was a socialite, and she had 3 daughters, but never married, which is quite interesting for a lady of her days. Hi, Anjay, welcome. And she was with a gentleman that was much older than her, but not married. She did take her name, though. And this is the only place in the cemetery where it's not actually recorded who's buried here, but we know it's Hannah Courtroy and her daughters, we believe. She should be in there, but we've not actually opened the door for well, at least 140 years now, even more, because nobody's got the key. See, you've got the key here. Nobody's got it, so we cannot actually go inside and check if there is indeed a time machine. That might sound a bit of an odd claim, but that was all over the newspaper at the time. Some people actually believed that getting in there, you could transport yourself into a different time period. And Bonamy is buried next to her, and close to her. He died in mysterious circumstances as well. So some believe that both Sam Warner, Bonamy, and Anna had the secret of time travel. Who knows? I'm gonna have to get the umbrella again. 1 sec. That was just a short period of excitement. Bear with me. It's raining again. There we go. There's another lady that's buried here, but she's on the other side. We're not gonna go all the way to see the place because she doesn't have a monument. She was buried in a communal grave, and she's a fascinating character. Her name is Harriet Wilson. She was a courtesan, a Regency courtesan, and Well, first I need to tell you what is exactly the difference between a courtesan and a prostitute. Usually the sex workers at the time, the standard prostitutes would kind of pretty much have sex with anybody, and that was only sex. A courtesan would, it was more than sex. They'll have usually only one client at the time, and they were highly educated, and they'll go with you to the theater, and they'll stay usually with the same client for months. And completely a bit random, but you know what happened to me earlier when I came here? That was just so weird. I was just walking under that tree when something fell down, And I looked on the floor. It was a pistachio, like a pistachio nut, like the one like straight out of the supermarket. So I picked it up and I looked up. This is so not a pistachio tree. I don't even know what a pistachio tree looks like. So I don't know, that was just weird. I don't know when pistachio get up there. It might be a spirit or anything. They might be having a laugh with me. But I saw it falling down. So why was there a pistachio up there? I have no idea. Anyway, back to Harriet. Harriet Wilson, by the way, not to be confused with Sarah Wilson. Sarah Wilson, she was a very early scammer. Quite a good one, actually. Sarah Wilson, she's a lady that was, she was transported to the United States as a prisoner, you know, before to send them to Australia. They were sent to the US. She was a thief. And she was such a good con artist. She managed to make people believe in America that she was the sister of Queen Charlotte. And that worked. She actually managed to stay with people for months and all that. So different ladies. That's Sarah Wilson, not buried here at all. Today we're talking about Harriet Wilson. So she was a courtesan that had a lot of customers, high profile, like George IV, the Duke of Argyll, Arthur Wolseley, the Duke of Wellington. That's not been proven, but yeah. And eventually, she was not super pretty, but she was very sassy and very popular. And eventually, when she got to the age of 40, she was not making as much money anymore as a courtesan, and she decided to publish her memoir. Let's go into the catacombs there, so we'll be sheltered. And it was a popular genre at the time. There had been quite a few. Look at the crows. There had been quite a few prostitutes' confessions, and she decided to. So she called it the Memoirs of Harriet Wilson, 1825. That was, and she decided so she would name and shame every single one of her clients, and she decided to blackmail them. So she sent a lot of drafts to a lot of our customers, including the Duke of Wellington. The Duke of Wellington famously said, "Publish and be hanged." And George IV, we believed he paid off because he was not published. So she would, it was like a series, they'll publish one chapter every week. So she did make quite a lot of money by blackmailing her customers. She did finish her life in poverty, though. She's buried on the other side, behind the cemetery has been built in the shape of a cathedral, like an outdoor cathedral. And behind the wall, straight ahead, that's where you had the communal graves. The communal graves, again, not to be confused with the pauper's grave. The pauper's grave were paid by the parish. The communal graves, you'd pay, just not as much, and you'd be buried with maybe another 10 strangers. Alpha is asking, yes, it is still a running cemetery today. So it was opened in, I think it's 1840. It was a private cemetery for a while, and in 1852 it became public. Well, it's not really public, it's part of the Crown Estate, but you can still be buried here today. I think the places, the spots are very, very limited, but you can still have a spot possibly. Yes, it's a beautiful place. So it's one of the Magnificent Seven. So we've got Abney Park, West Norwood, Tower Hamlets, all those. And actually, to run a tour, this one is probably one of the easiest for me because it's very, very well documented. There's a lot of information about who's buried where, and because it became public so early, everything is very, very well recorded. And you even have those little plaques on the floor. So if you were to buy all the publications from the Friends of Brompton Cemetery, you then get all the maps. So it's very, very well documented. And that's the chapel down there at the bottom. It's hard to see from here, but if you saw it from the sky, you can see that it's been designed as like an outdoor cathedral, really. And on the sides, those are the catacombs. The catacombs, they were not massively popular. To give you an idea, we have 205,000 people buried here. There's only 500 in the catacombs. The catacombs were cheaper, but somehow people didn't really want to go for them. You love it there, you'd like to be buried here. Well, hopefully that won't come too soon. And let me show you another gentleman that is no longer buried here, but he was here at some point. He's got a little wreath on his grave. It's Chief Long Wolf. Some of you might have heard of him. They've moved his body. He's now back in South Dakota. So he was a Native American, and you want to be near the time machine? Cool. So yeah, he was a Native American that came here to perform a show from Buffalo Bill. Originally, they came here we're going to see Luisa Casati, Kurt, in a moment. Yeah, it was for Victoria's Jubilee that they wanted a show, and then he was performing here for a few years, and he died here. We believe pneumonia, that's not too sure. So he was buried here because, you know, at the time we didn't really have the capacity to bring bodies all across the pond. And he eventually, I think it was in the 90s that they sent him back to South Dakota. Not only him, himself, Chief Long Wolf, as well as a little girl called White Star. She was an infant that she had died. She fell off a horse and she had been buried on top of him. They sent her back to America as well. So now they're buried together in South Dakota. Anyway, Kurt just mentioned her. We're going to see Marquise Luisa Casati. She was a fascinating lady in her own right. She was like the Lady Gaga of the early 20th century. She was a fashion icon, but really for the time, very strange. She would out designers and Beatrice Potter, or maybe Mark, I'm not sure. There's a lot of, you know what, I could do at least 3 tours here. There are so many famous names. I could come back and do another 2 completely different tours. Yeah, she did quite a few photo shoots, so there she is. So this is Casati's grave. She inspired a lot of the fashion designer. Let me show you her name. She was she married a Marquise. She was bisexual and quite a great supporter of the LGBT community as well. So very interesting lady. And when she at the end of her life, she was not that rich anymore. Apparently, people sometimes spotted her looking in the bins, you know, looking for a few feathers or a few items that would have been left behind to add to her style or her. Well, you don't have to be poor to do that anyway. I do that sometimes as well. Anyway, very interesting lady. And talking about the LGBT community, in the let me go back this way because I want a little way. In the 70s and 80s, this park was known to be a cruising site for gay boys. It's not the only one. Some of the Magnificent Seven as well were often used to do this type of things. But apparently, that was terrible. Apparently here in the 70s and 80s, they had what they called pretty policemen. There were some policemen literally pretending to be gay men, approaching those men and then arresting them for soliciting. Have to be very careful. She paraded with a pair of live cheetahs. Oh, I didn't know. Oh yeah, she was a character. And interesting story. You might know when adopted or she took over a few local prince and princesses and like Dulip site, and she became their godmother, and she brought them to the UK where they were very well treated. You know, some of them had an accommodation like Sophia Dulip site in Hampton Court. How is it called? Grace of Favour, those apartments? Grace of Favour. Anyway, so they appeared to be very well treated, but they had been removed from their families. And there's a little princess here, Victoria Gouramma. That's exactly what happened to her. She was the princess of Coorg, and she was taken. She was the first Indian princess to be converted into Christianity. Queen Victoria became her godmother. It might sound like a nice story, but oh, look at this. Hello. It might sound like a nice story, but actually, when she was in the UK, she was not allowed to be in contact with her father. She tried to run away a few times. They tried to play Cupid. They actually tried to marry her to Dulip site. Dulip site, if you don't know, that's the one from the a lot of them. Dinner. I only say that because I'm French. I don't eat them. Yeah. You know the Kohinoor diamond. It was stolen by. It was taken or gifted. Gifted between brackets by Dulip site to Queen Victoria. And they actually tried to marry little Princess Victoria Gouramma to Dulip site, but that did not work. They didn't fancy each other, and she actually married. I think he was a naval officer, a gentleman 30 years older than her. Anyway, here she is, Princess Victoria Gouramma. And poor little snails. Do you mean people that eat them? That's okay, I don't eat them, Janie. And sad story really, because although she was like a member of high society, she'd go to all those balls with, dancing with the top of society in Britain. She did try to escape a few times, so she was clearly not enjoying it that much. Let me show you a photo. I don't know why I've decided to show you a photo of her, but I didn't show you anybody else like Jon Snow or anything. But I think she looks cute, and probably not. Well, they did not used to smile at the time on photography, so it's not. She's not that sad. It's just it was at the time they just didn't. But yeah, interesting little princess. And you know what? When I came here earlier, I was stood literally right here, and I was looking for her everywhere. And I was like, oh no, it was pouring down, far worse than it is right now. And I was like, oh, and I actually said out loud, oh, where are you, little princess? And then I looked down, there she was. So there was maybe a sign as well, like the pistachio, I don't know. Yeah, she died birth. Happy as it looks. Anyway, let me go back to the main alley in the middle, so you can have the view of the chapel and everything. we go. It's a little bit more beautiful when it's sunny, but yeah. I think that's probably you see the yellow stone on the side, that's probably the bath stone. I should double check that, but I think it's probably the bath stone. Looked a bit creepy, yeah. Right, it's gonna be the end of the tour. Let me know if you happen to have any questions before we go. I'll just walk down that way so you can see a little bit more of the area that would have been more Pauper's grave at the time, and a lot of victims as well of cholera, and that's the area also where there's a few more new graves at the moment. Ones, there are signs actually that you're not meant to cycle, so it's a popular spot for cycling and jogging. In this part of London we've got a lot of green open spaces in London, but in Chelsea there's a lot of parks that are not actually public. You've got only the residents that have a key, so really around here we do not have that many parks, so the cemetery is very much used like a park. Some people just come here to have a drink, some people come here to do their jogging. And it's not that busy today because of the weather, but it's actually usually a fairly busy spot. Oh, I should come one day, Linda. Yeah. Well, we've got some amazing cemeteries in the rest of the UK as well. I should go and explore a bit further. So it's around here that Harriet Wilson was buried, with another, I think, 8 people. Because at the time, you know, they'll open a grave, they'll put your coffin, and they wouldn't close it for another week or 2 until it was full in those communal graves, and then you didn't have a monument or anything. Right, let me show you my face again. It's completely new to me. If you don't subscribe to me yet, you might want to give me a little subscribe, just to make sure you're most likely to see my lives, not so much. So do give me a follow if you want to make sure you don't miss out on the next clip through YouTube as well. But just so you know, I'll have to pay more commission to Google, so I still much prefer the PayPal and oh, Jenny, if any, I know individually because I do the names in here, but do make sure you know that you are very, very much appreciated. It's the only money we get at the moment, or the only money I get. Eventually, in a few hours of watch time, I'll get a little something from the commercials, but that's really negligible. It's really not much. So we still very much rely on your tips. Thanks, Polly. Thanks, Anjay. Thanks, Barry. And if you want to see a bit more of me, what am I doing this week? Oh, Friday I'm going back to tell you about the Mayflower in Rotherhithe, and Sunday night Mayfair. So that's the Monopoly tour. But if you're not a fan of Monopoly, but you like your dark history, do come to Mayfair, because we have a few dark stories in Mayfair. And let me leave you with a view again. So again, thanks very much for coming today, guys. See you soon. Keep YouTubing, and do, you know, YouTube is a platform that does work with engagement. So do like, comment if you want to support. If you cannot tip and you want to support, every little helps, because those likes and those comments, it helps you. Yes, Angie, yeah. If you go into my lives, that was actually one of the first ones I did on YouTube last April. It's called Saint-Brévin, Ocean Serpent and Miscreant, I think it was called. I didn't have the best weather. I didn't have any sunset or anything. It was all grey. But yeah, if you wanted to look it up, it's in my live section. It's one of the earliest one. Nice to have you back, Leslie. And I'll see you all soon. Have a good rest of your Sunday, and hopefully I'll see you on Friday. Tubing, and have a good one. Bye bye.